Good morning, everyone. It is a deep joy to be with you today from my other home in Birmingham, Alabama. Today, we'll have numerous opportunities for you to check in with your body, perhaps in ways that you aren't accustomed to doing during a service. Um, Sorry, my dog chose this exact moment to start eating breakfast, so I just have to. Life is real and continues no matter what our intentions. So, though each of our services are full of music, thanks to the extraordinary gifts of Tad and your musical volunteers, we'd like to give you an opportunity to make music in alignment with your own spirit. Take a few moments to notice exactly how you are today. It may be a little bit different than yesterday. It may be a little different than how you woke up this morning. We're choosing to begin today's service with a humming practice because humming can give us a little bit more direct sensation of the vibrations of music that our systems can create. So we'll start with an exploration of humming. You can hum any note that feels good to you. You could try to hum the lowest note that you can find. As we explore our humming practice, Tad will join in improvising at the piano. At that time, you could choose to hum notes that feel like they're in alignment with the music that you hear. You could choose to hum a note that has nothing to do with the music that you hear. You could choose to believe that there is no such thing as a wrong note. But the invitation here is to notice everything that you can about the vibrations that you can feel in your body. Where do they happen? What do they feel like? And when our practice is over, what can you notice about a change in your state? I'll begin and you can join me whenever the time is right. And then I'll mute myself and defer to my husband at the piano.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, to those of you here in our room and to those of you on Zoom. For those of you in the room, I've just been told that there's a car with license plates from Wisconsin that has a car alarm going off. So if that's you by any chance, you might want to go out and play with your little trigger to get it to turn off. So I am Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry. What a beautiful way to start our morning. I feel like my body feels so much in tune, actually, with you all, even though we may not have been humming in tune in classical ways. I'm joined today by Worship Associate Gloria Perlstein, Tad Coriath, Clara, Kelly, who's over there, and Emily Coriath are providing music. And Emily was the person you saw on the screen originally. So she's not only sharing music, but also doing some reflections on our topic today, which is finding your center in the midst of trauma, and which happens to be a research passion of hers. So I'm delighted to welcome her from Alabama to be with us today. We're continuing to find ways to build our connections, even in this multi-platform world. So today we'll experiment with putting the Zoom gallery view up on the sanctuary monitors during the welcome words, so you can start to see who's on Zoom joining us from wherever they may be. We'll leave the Zoom view up on the screen with captions as well as an experiment to increase accessibility here in the sanctuary. We wish the captions could be larger, but this is what our technology can do for us right now. And it's easier from the front rows. So if you're someone who might benefit from captions, come forward, because, you know, there's always seats in the front. And I like when we're a little closer together. So I invite you to center yourself for our welcome words. You are welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, challenges and gifts, shapes and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. With all the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. No matter how long you are away, nor how soon until you return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. And we acknowledge that the land surrounding us is the stolen territory of the Arapaho people, and that many Native people roamed freely on this land for millennia before the arrival of white settlers. And we commit ourselves to be a center for spiritual exploration and justice making, and to anti-racism and anti-oppression work both within and beyond the walls of our congregation. Now, as I mentioned, today's service is finding your center in the midst of trauma. And while we did have intentional conversations about seeking not to activate people's trauma during this service, we can't guarantee that even talking about trauma or even saying the word trauma won't challenge some folks beyond their comfort zone. So part of what we're doing is helping you stay in touch with your own body. But if this feels like whatever's happening feels a little bit like it's too much for you, please, if you're here in the sanctuary, don't hesitate to get up and take a break. And those of you on Zoom, you know all the things you can do when you're not wanting to pay attention. And you can always reach out to me or one of our lay pastoral care associates following the service if anything for you becomes activated. If you are new here, we are so glad you found us and hope that in this community you will find the warmth and love and an experience that invites you to come back again and again. And our services are different every week, so we do suggest that you do that. Those on Zoom can check out the links to find out how to get better connected, and those in person can look in the back of your hymnal for a QR code or go to the people at the welcome welcome center in the foyer, or just chat it up with any of us because we'll help you get connected. Following the service today, we'll have an inquirer session on small group ministries that's open to anybody who would like to learn more about our congregation in the area of what we do with our small groups. And finally, if there's anybody on Zoom who'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead and do that in the chat so people on Zoom can greet you. And those of you in here, just turn around, say hi to your neighbor if you would, if you feel comfortable doing so. And you're invited to take all that beautiful energy into coffee hour with you following the service. And now we'll light our chalice. Those of you at home, if you have a chalice, go ahead and light it, and you can say where you've lit it in the chat. And everyone, we can say our chalice lighting words together. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I'll sing our bowl again and invite you to let the sound of the bowl draw you deeper into this present moment and the company of this gathered community.
Good morning. Before this reflection, I invite you again to take a minute to notice your body. You don't have to change or fix anything, but just see what you feel. Do you feel air moving into and out of your body? Maybe you can feel yourself making contact with your chair. And tune into how your body feels. Is it warm? Is it chilly? Is it tight? Just take a moment and pay attention to that. And here begins the reflection. I used to think that trauma only related to life-threatening events like combat, violence, assault, natural disasters, and large incidents like that. And unless I really have repressed my memories, I don't believe that I have experienced any of those types of events. So I didn't think I had trauma. But then I read a really eye-opening article called "Resolving the Trauma You Didn't Know You Had." And that article said that trauma arises from, quote, any significant, impactful event or incident that made us feel bad, scared, hurt, or ashamed. And the article continues, by this definition, we have all experienced some degree of trauma in the process of growing up. And how well we cope in our lives depends to a large degree on how much we're willing to recognize and make sense of this trauma. That article and many experts on trauma also distinguish between capital T trauma and small t trauma. Large T, capital T trauma, arises from disturbing, life-threatening events or situations like the ones I named earlier. Small t trauma comes from incidents that made us feel bad, scared, hurt, ashamed, or that threatened our sense of security. Both kinds of trauma affect our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, and our bodies. I have a lot of small t trauma. For example, I was a very curious kid. I wanted to know how things worked, why certain things were the way they were, and what all kinds of words meant. Sometimes my parents accepted and supported my curiosity, but other times their responses were much more negative than I expected. So I heard, "You're not supposed to look at that. That's none of your business. You shouldn't have asked that. And don't let your father ever hear you say that word." So these kinds of reactions definitely made me feel bad, hurt, ashamed, wrong. And I felt insecure because I never knew when they would happen. And I became afraid to speak up. I don't think my parents meant to be hurtful. I thought they were trying to raise me in the way that they thought was right. They likely had small t trauma of their own, but these incidents had a lasting effect. I first went into therapy when I was in my mid-20s. One of the first things the therapist said to me was, "It seems that if anybody says, 'Gloria,' you immediately think, 'What did I do wrong?'" And that therapist was correct. I was constantly afraid of doing something wrong. Trauma expert Alyssa Barbash believes that most people who go into therapy or counseling do so because of an accumulation of small t trauma. The events that generated such trauma often seem very silly or insignificant to our adult minds, and we're tempted to discount them, or we're embarrassed that we're still affected by them. But ignoring them does not reduce their impact on our lives. And personally, I believe that seeing when and how trauma reactions play out in my life is helping me to reclaim my soul.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt for just a moment. We have a car with Wisconsin plates in the parking lot that has an alarm going off. So if that might be your car, could you please check into it? It's been going for a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I would just invite you again to just take a moment and notice your body. Has anything changed in response to the words you've heard? There's no right or wrong answer to this. There's only the truth of your body at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Now we'll take the opportunity to expand on our humming practice inside a different container. Tad and Clara will collaborate to bring us hymn number 1053 in the Teal hymnal, How Could Anyone? This time we'll let Tad start with that familiar music. And again, as it plays through once, be curious about your humming practice. How is it different when the music starts first? How is it now that you've tried it out once and have a different perception of the risk or safety involved? Tad will play it once through, and then you'll be invited to sing along with Clara as you feel called. Before this reflection begins, take a moment to notice your body exactly as it is. There is nothing to change or to fix. Can you feel air moving in and out of your body as you breathe? Perhaps you can perceive yourself making contact with the chair. Try to go beneath emotion words like happy or sleepy to the physical sensations underneath. Is there heat, coolness? Maybe you feel tingles or you are aware of a numb spot. Welcome everything that you can perceive. I'm so delighted to be talking to you today. Many of you know me as Tad's wife, a title I wear very proudly, or that singing lady who shows up at church from time to time. But today I'm coming to you as Dr. Emily Coriath, Assistant Professor of Music at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I have been researching trauma since 2015, and along the way, I've become certified as a somatic experiencing practitioner. Somatic experiencing is the trauma healing modality developed by psychologist Peter Levine based on his work with patients dating all the way back to the 1960s. One of the things that Levine became curious about immediately was the ways that human survival responses echo animals in the wild. Our body perceives threat to our well-being. And before our brain can even process the thought, we begin to mobilize for action. If we think our chances are good, we may decide to fight for our survival. If we think we're unlikely to win the fight, we may use that activated energy to run away as fast as we can. There's also a third response that doesn't get talked about as much, but is just as innately brilliant. If our system perceives that we're unable to be successful by fighting or fleeing, we will choose a third option, freeze, an immobilization of our system that makes us less appealing to a predator. What Levine was curious about is that animals and humans share these survival responses, but animals in the wild do not experience nervous system trauma. Some of the ways that Levine has tried to explain this are that animals give themselves the time that they need to recover from their experience according to their own body's rhythms. And most importantly, to our conversation today, animals live in community. Some colloquial definitions of trauma are that it occurs anytime our beliefs about the world are shaken. Stephen Porges, who's the author of the polyvagal theory, suggests that trauma is a response to our profound loss of connection. We feel so damaged, so broken, as to be unlovable to others. As we learn more and more about trauma and holding trauma in community, we can get curious about what we can do, especially because we understand that, as Gloria mentioned, almost all of us have experienced trauma, either with a capital T or a lowercase t. There's new data that suggests that half of American 17-year-olds have witnessed trauma firsthand or experienced it for themselves. It turns out that the most beneficial thing we can do for others who are experiencing trauma is to tend to our own healing. One reason for this is that our nervous systems communicate with each other. No matter what soothing words I may try to offer, if my body is anxious and dysregulated, the bodies around me will pick up on those messages and interpret my presence as unsafe. One reason for this is that as human babies, we learn regulation of emotions in the context of the nervous systems we have access to. We cry when we're hungry or wet or tired, and our caregivers either respond to those needs and soothe us, or don't respond, or panic in the face of our distress. This is how we sometimes learn that our emotions are unsafe and unwelcome. And so as we grow and heal our own trauma, we look for who we are underneath those responses before we let our worldview be shaped by others' opinions of us. We are not the fixers of those we love and share community with. The desire to be the diagnostician or the fixer actually creates a power imbalance between us and keeps us separate from one another. Reverend Leah will discuss community even more in her reflection, but as we've been planting seeds with you this morning, some of the most important questions you can ask yourself are, what arises in your system as you witness someone's suffering or hold the story of their emotional difficulty? Usually, those feelings reveal a tender part of you that is asking to be helped and to be healed. So how can we hold our pain without being overwhelmed by it? This leads me to my favorite part, and the part that I don't always get to discuss with the singers that I work with and my clients, but this is one of my definitions of faith. We know that somehow we're experiencing pain, that pain happens to all humans, and that pain will pass. We don't know how, we don't know what has to take place for that to occur, but we believe deeply that it will. As we learn to hold our own emotional lives with grace, we also learn to believe in human resilience. We see it in ourselves, and we know that it's possible for everyone. As we transition activities, I invite you to notice your body once again. Has anything changed in response to the words you've heard? There is no right or wrong, only the truth of your body as it is in this moment. I'd like to lead you in one more opportunity to experience some embodied music making. You may or may not be familiar with the song We Rise by Batya Levine. There's a slide that will appear in the sanctuary and the words will be pasted into the chat. And because of technology, I'll sing it myself so that we don't create any synchronicity issues with the piano. I also invite you to consider joining me in this rhythm that you can tap on your body or on your chair, especially if you don't feel called to sing in this moment. Original sound. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise. Repeat all that. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise, humbly hearted rise, won't be divided, rise, with Spirit to guide us, rise.
I was just going to say that. Oh, dear Emily, thank you so much for joining us from Alabama today. Before this reflection begins, you know what I'm going to ask you. Take a moment to check in with your body one more time. And if it hasn't kind of made sense to you yet, checking in with your body is a key to helping yourself stay regulated and not get into that active trauma response. So check into your body. There's nothing to change or fix. See if you can feel the parts of your body that are making contact with the chair or with the floor. See if you can name some of the physical sensations underneath. For me right now, my hands are a little cold. My heart is beating a little faster than it ordinarily does. What's going on in your own body? For years, whenever I heard an ambulance, my heartbeat sped up and I felt clammy all over. I was immediately taken back to a particular night in 1986 when I was in college and when I found my boyfriend passed out in his car after taking too many sleeping pills a couple of weeks after I had broken up with him. Just thinking about this now, I just feel this tension all through here. The reaction to ambulances finally abated until about a year and a half ago with the Boulder shooting. When I was on the telephone with my daughter, who was an employee at the Table Mesa King Super, and unfortunately not working that day, but she called me to tell me that her place of employment had an active shooter. And as she was telling me that this was happening, I saw police and ambulances shooting by me on Baseline Road from Lafayette. So now that's back again. The sound of an ambulance, now the sound of fire trucks from the fire. I can just feel it in my body all the time. In these big T traumas, that upended my sense of the world, I immediately can notice the changes in my body. But when it comes to those small T traumas, those recurring events that resulted in us feeling bad or scared or hurt or ashamed, or that threaten our sense of security in a small T way, the way belonging or being loved, all those ways, like Gloria said, that we get bumped into and injured emotionally just by the course of being human with one another. In those moments, I'm usually not aware of my bodily reactions until I'm over the line behaviorally. Until I've said something or reacted with a tone in my voice that doesn't match my core values or my vision of the person I am supposed to be. and ends up hurting others or having them feel ashamed or hurt or angry. This is like what being human is, right? We are constantly bumping into each other, saying and doing things, moving from this place of woundedness, either big wounds that haven't been processed or the small ones. Between all the unintentional and intentional little jabs that left us feeling like we were inadequate, that diminished our sense of worth and dignity, and all the alarms that we've experienced in our own lives, all the big T traumas that we have shared collectively in these past few years, including the ongoing wear of the COVID pandemic. I'm convinced that a majority of us are more tightly wired these days than maybe we were a few years ago. And that is more likely to get stuck in what's called the amygdala hijack, when the back of your brain that goes into fight and flight, like Emily said, just takes over. We are more likely to have those alarm bells go off and that aren't really proportional to what's really happening. That's what happens, right? Something takes over and it's a bigger thing in our own body spirit than what is actually happening. When we then mistake a conflict, which is a difference of opinion, for perhaps a personalized attack, or something that has us feeling like we can't be safe with that person, and then aroused ourselves, we fight back. Welcome to the human condition. And so I wonder, how can we, as a congregation, as a caring congregation, keep our own center in the midst of trauma? What skills do we need so that when we do bump into each other emotionally, which is bound to happen, we can de-escalate situations more often than inflaming them or agitating them? More and more, I'm attuning myself to our fellowship's culture, processes, and policies that promote the main components of what are called trauma-informed organizations: safety, emotional and physical, trustworthiness and transparency, choice. I loved how Emily just said, if you feel like singing, sing. If you don't feel like singing, hum. Just sit there, all of those things. Collaboration, empowerment, and understanding cultural, historical, and gender issue contexts. So how is power and our understanding of threat shifted based on those contexts? And this year, we'll be looking at our conflict resolution policies through this lens of being trauma-informed. This is kind of what congregations are supposed to be about, right? When I read that list, I thought this is what we try to do in a covenanted community. And while institutional changes are important, we can't create a policy or a procedure manual to write our way out of the interactions that create trauma responses in us. I wish it was that easy. I wish we could just hand each other the manual and then we would all be that beloved covenanted community we want to be. I know, right? Oh. In preparing for this, I read the work of Dr. Jacob Ham. He's the director of the Center for Child Trauma and Resilience at Mount Sinai Medical Center, New York. And as he was thinking about trauma-informed organizations, which is a big buzzword in the healing fields right now, he really said that being trauma-informed begins with you, by each individual. It starts with those interactions that provide the little ouch. So each of us, no matter what's in the manual, no matter how we create procedures of welcome of everything that we try to do, trauma-informed really is how do each of us learn to be attentive to what's arising in us, in our bodies, in our minds, in our emotions, when we're having interactions. We need to understand our own survival brain and what we do when we feel that way, whether we get aggressive and blame others or we withdraw and give up. We need to learn to slow our bodies down as much as possible and let the emotions and the body cool down. I'm trying to learn to kind of hold off on clicking send so quick on some of those emails. And have patience with ourselves when we notice this natural body response happening. And don't blame ourselves for when we get into that state. It means that something important is going on for us, or that we're feeling that something we really care about is being threatened. What Dr. Ham proposes is using an acronym called PAGE. So when you're in that one-to-one interaction or group-to-one interaction where something goes on and you go, yeah. So first to notice it, figure out how to calm your body down, and then in order to move forward, he suggests PAGE first. Purpose. What life do I want to live? How can I uphold my values in this moment? For me, and I would say this happens mostly in parenting, it's like, how do I just relax enough so that I can respond in a way that I want to respond as a mother? After that, recognizing that when our alarm bells go up, we have a hard time attuning to another person because we're taking care of our own self-preservation. So attune to the other person. What's really going on with them? That's the A, attune. The G is goal. What is the actual goal of this interaction? Now, I've gotten myself agitated to think that there's some kind of a survival goal around this, but what's the actual goal? And as a parent, sometimes I think, can I let go of what they've had for breakfast so we can get to school if the goal is getting to school? And then finally, E is the emotion. What am I really feeling? What's arising is a feeling of being threatened, but underneath that is probably a feeling of vulnerability. And connection, the reconnecting from that moment of two people being in alarm, happens when one of those people can get in touch with those feelings and risk to be vulnerable to say, you know what was really going on? I'm just scared about this. Or I was so used to being told this that when you came at me with that, I heard it as you were blaming me. To really get underneath that. So that's where PAGE is. Your purpose, attuning to the other person, what's the goal of that interaction, and figuring out what you are really feeling. Now, this is not easy. This takes practice, just like going to the gym and keeping our body fit. But if this isn't the central work of covenanted community, I'm not sure what is. Because when we can center into our own understanding of ourselves and how we respond and react to people, we can take that into the world. And we can begin to see when other people are in those spaces and bring a more centered, deactivated, attuned self. So we're functioning from a whole body experience and including our capacity to think clearly so we can truly be healers, not only of ourselves, but of our world. May it be so. And now, scan your body again. See how anything may have changed for you in the words you've just heard. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just your body being your body. And that's the truth of your body in this moment.
Each week, we remind ourselves of the abundance in our lives and in this community by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today, half of our plate will go to First Unitarian Society in Denver to help them shelter, clothe, and feed migrants who have been released at the Mexican border and who have come to Denver. First Unitarian Society is part of a network of churches and community groups that are working with the city of Denver to make sure that basic needs are met for this sudden influx of migrants. Many of them are stopping in Denver only for a few days before they travel to other destinations where they have family or where jobs are available. Half of your plate donations today will help with the expenses that First Unitarian is incurring. And if you are interested in volunteering with them, please contact First Unitarian directly. You can text your donation today at the number on the screen, or if you're at the fellowship, please place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please give generously as you so often do. And as our musical reflection begins, we invite you to reflect on and write into the chat, if you're on Zoom, your answer to this question. What do you notice in your body when you become reactive to trauma? And what tools do you use to recenter yourself?
No. So I noticed a slide up there, and on your Zoom screen it says CERC, but this really is going to the First Unitarian Church of Denver, and they are doing an incredible job of housing migrants who are coming through so they can find more, until they can find more stable housing. So I dedicate these offerings to the fellowship and the beautiful work we do here, bringing love, justice, compassion, and reason into the world, and to the First Unitarian Church of Denver, doing their incredible inner city work of supporting migrants who are coming to rebuild their lives in a new way. This is a time in our service for our own community sharing. If you have something, a joy or a concern that you would like to share and you're here in the sanctuary, you can come up here and speak into the microphone and briefly let us know what is in your heart today. Those of you on Zoom can write it to everyone in the chat, and then I will read them following the folks in the sanctuary. And one last one for all the joys and concerns that remain in the silent sanctuary of your hearts, knowing that even in our silence, we are bound together in the web of life. Beloveds, it is so good to be together. And together with those of you on Zoom as well. My colleague, the Reverend Ninan Soto, wrote this poem. She wrote, "Bring your broken hallelujahs here. Bring the large one that is beyond repair. Bring the soft one that's too soft, the small one that's too soft to share. Bring your broken hallelujahs here. I know that people have told you that before you can give, you have to get yourself together. They overstated perfection by a lot. Or they forgot. You are the gift. We all bring some broken things, songs and dreams and long lost hopes. But here and together, we reach within. As a community, we begin again. And from the pieces, we will build something new. There is work that only you can do. We wait for you. And as I have been exploring and thinking about all the ways that simply being human means we bump into each other and we have big and small challenges, I continue the invitation to you. Bring your broken hallelujahs here. Let us be the place where your gifts and your fragility can be honored and valued. Because this, my friends, is how we heal ourselves and the world. May this be our promise and our prayer as a beloved community each and every day. Blessed be.
So the beautiful thing about meditation on breathing, almost forgot, is that it's another chance to check in with our bodies. I'm just saying, it's right there. So meditation on breathing is number 1009 in your teal hymnal, if you need it. Some of you might not need it. Some of us know this song pretty well. But we're going to take it slow and loose and easy today and just kind of settle into this song. So you can join in whenever your spirit is ready or not. If your body wants to stand, great. If not, just settle into where you are and come in when you're ready. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
So beautiful. But we wouldn't be a community without announcements. So we have undecked the halls, as you noticed, and now we need to take the decorations out to the barn. And so we're looking for a couple of volunteers. You can see David Burris or Ani Liggett. After the service, many hands make light work to just get things from in the building to into our barn. You may have noticed today that we're keeping the sanctuary door closed so people can come in with a kind of a contemplative and readying feel to the service. Since we have so much room that way, you can stay out and chat until 2 minutes of 10 or 10. But then when you're ready to really be centered, come into the sanctuary and we'll keep this as a sacred, quieter space as the service is starting. Today's Inquirer series I mentioned is about small group ministries. They're a great way for people to get connected to the life of the congregation. So grab yourself, you can go into Fellowship Hall and grab yourself a drink, a coffee, and then come back out here. We meet here in the sanctuary about 15 minutes after the service. And those on Zoom will also be invited to join. And I think that's all we have for today. So we will extinguish our chalice now. Oh, I'm doing that today. Oops. Which makes a difference now because it's all cued for the Zoom people. So Please say the words with me. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. May you go forth filled with the love of this community and ready to serve and to receive the love in the world. Blessed be. Amen.